The Wedding Favor, Part 17. Francesca and Marie are almost finished with cleaning up by the time Damien reappears. He comes in being his suave persona, but he freezes the moment he lays eyes on Ella. It's barely a second that he's stumped, but it's enough to make Ella's heart skip a beat. She's never stopped a guy in his tracks before. The smile that grows on his face is gentle and, dare Ella think it, genuine. It eases something deep inside of her, and Ella's worries disappear as she smiles back. The alarm bells going off in the back of her head are just noise that can be ignored as long as he keeps looking at her like that. It's as if they are the only ones in the room as he approaches her and his eyes trail over her face and hair. Damien keeps drinking her in and he slowly takes one of her hands in his. "You look amazing." His thumb brushes over her knuckles, absent-mindedly. It feels more intimate than any of the kisses they have shared. Ella chuckles and moves to hide her mouth behind her hand. Marie's voice pops into her head before she actually does. No ruining her makeup. She waves her hand to the side instead. It's just Francesca's and Marie's good work. Don't be silly. We had a great canvas. The two artists then spend a good deal of time showering Ella with compliments, and Ella can't bear to look at them. She stares at Damien's hand, holding hers instead. His knuckles look a bit red. Were they red before? Ella can't remember. They look like they would hurt. Ella turns her hand so she can see his knuckles better. They are definitely hurt. One of them is scraped and on the edge of bleeding. Damien clears his throat and pulls his hand away from Ella's gaze. She tightens her grip, not wanting to let him go yet, but he simply squeezes once and then lets go. Ella opens her mouth to ask about what happened, but she's stopped by Damien pulling her in for a side hug. He grins at his friends while keeping a tight hold of Ella. We do need to hurry to get to our tailor on time. The way Damien can be so congenial while forcing Ella to stay quiet with nothing but a tight hand on her shoulder ruins Ella's rose-colored glasses. The hug doesn't feel very comforting right now. Of course, we shall see you at the airport. Francesca and Marie give both of them a kiss on the cheek and leave, speaking rapid French with each other. Damien holds Ella close until they are fully gone, and then lets his arm drop from Ella's shoulders. He takes a step back as he rubs his reddened knuckles with a wince. Sorry, they don't know about the family business, and I would like to keep it that way. Ella needs a moment before the penny drops. He wasn't hunting an animal rat. He was taking care of a human rat. Ella's eyes go wide as she looks at his hands, still rubbing each other as if he's sore. And then she notices the small red spot near the bottom of his shirt. Oh God, is that blood? Damien stops his hand wringing to grab his shirt. He hums and nods. Yeah, damn, I thought I was clean. Without much ado, he strips his shirt off and walks off towards his room. Somehow, his muscles are more defined than they were before. Ella blinks at herself and looks away. What the hell is wrong with her? The man just beat someone up and she's ogling his torso and back? Get a grip, girl. What happened? Ella almost second-guesses her question, but decides she wants to know anyway. She follows Damien, not wanting him out of her sight for some reason. Damien looks at her over his shoulder with a slight frown. He's clearly wondering whether or not Ella really wants to know. Ella crosses her arms and tries to look confident. Damien throws her an amused smirk and gets dressed. Uncle had been looking for this guy for months. The doorman saw him earlier, so he sent a grunt to track the guy and asked me to interrogate him. Ella keeps staring at Damien. He doesn't meet her eyes as he explains, almost as if he's afraid of what he'll see on her face, or maybe he's ashamed of what he did, or maybe he's playing pretend and this is all a neat trick to get under her skin. How is she supposed to know what's the truth? Ella purses her lips and steels herself. You mean he asked you to torture him, right? Damien's eyes snap to hers in surprise. His eyes stare straight into her soul, and Ella hopes the fear is hidden far away. He shrugs and nods once, his stare unfaltering and unblinking. The admission feels like a gut punch, and Ella looks away. He huffs out a laugh and pushes past her to the front door. What did you expect, sweetheart? You asked the mob for a favor. You knew what you were getting. Scorn almost drips from his voice. There was nothing gentle in it at all. It's a total 180 compared to what he was like this morning. It's almost as if he's snapping at her for hurting his feelings. Ella shakes her head. That is just wishful thinking. She wants Damien to be her perfect fantasy boyfriend instead of the manipulative criminal he actually is. She's always been prone to hope for the unattainable, and this situation isn't any different. They get into the elevator without another word. The silence makes the air itself feel uncomfortable. It makes Ella's skin crawl until she can't take it anymore. She breaks the silence with the first thing that pops into her mind. Did you stalk me before I asked your uncle for a date? Damien stares at her for a moment, visibly taken aback. His eyes shift to the side once before he blinks and draws himself up to his full height again. When did he slump? He looks down his nose at Ella with a blank face. I didn't stalk you. I was one of the guys that kept you under surveillance after you helped out Uncle. What? He just admits to it? Ella really expected him to sell her some kind of story. How does that work? When did you watch me? How long? What did you see? Damien's jaw clenches and he cocks his head to the side. Ella, are you sure you want to know? The patronizing tone of his voice sets Ella off immediately. Of course I do. Someone was watching me. I feel violated. And I want to know how much, what I just need to know. Ella can't breathe for a moment and her brain short circuits. The only thing that calms her down again is a warm, heavy hand softly sitting on her shoulder. The worry that is plain of Damien's face helps too. When her breathing is less erratic, Damien grimaces and rubs a hand across his brow. We sat in a car or in the flat across the street from yours. We watched you through the lens of a camera. Ella gasps, but Damien squeezes her shoulder before she can spiral too far. Ella pushes him away and Damien drops his hand with a flinch. We didn't take photos or film you in compromising situations. There weren't any worth capturing. You're a genuinely good person, Ella. The apartment across the street, it looks straight into her living room and bedroom. Her bathroom doesn't have windows, and Ella always dresses in there. She's never been more glad for her habit. The only thing they could have seen is her walking around in her towel gathering clothes. Wait a second. We. Her voice comes out as a squeak. Uncle put a team on you for half a year, 24/7. I think about 8 people were on the rotation. After a moment of trying to process the fact that 8 people, men, were watching her constantly for 6 months, Ella gives up on it. Why? Damien's scoff aggravates Ella. Because you saw the dead body in his trunk, Ella. You said you wouldn't report anything, and Don needed to make sure you didn't. He opens his hands and waves them to the side. We wouldn't be successful enough to live in places like this if we simply trusted strangers on their word. He's got a point there. What would have happened if I spoke to anyone about it? You would have ended up as another body in his trunk. Ella swallows down the bile rising up. Would you have? Damien starts shaking his head before Ella finishes her question. Don't start with hypotheticals, Ella. You didn't talk, and you're never going to. There's no point in wondering what would happen if you did. You'd be stressed out for things that'll never happen. Why is he making so much sense? Ella hates it. She doesn't want to agree with him. She's mad at him for not telling her he basically stalked her. She's even angrier he did tell his friends about her. On that account, why did you talk to your friends about me before we even met? Damien freezes, eyes wide. He genuinely looks like a deer caught in headlights. He opens his mouth, and for one moment, Ella believes he's going to open up about something personal. Then he clears his throat and smirks. I needed an alibi for work. It's so obviously a lie. Ella knows it. Damien knows that Ella knows it. But the elevator doors open before Ella can figure out a good response. Damien gives her a shallow bow and motions towards the door. After you, sweetheart. The nickname sweetheart puts Ella's hackles up. He's never called her that before, and in such a demeaning tone. Ella scowls at him and stamps out of the elevator. It's all she can do to stop him and herself from really noticing how much the stupid nickname affects her. Why does his behavior bother her so much? Isn't this exactly what she expected he was like? Why does Ella get her hopes up for nothing?